Welcome to We Need to Talk, a channel dedicated to figuring out the meaning of life and how to reduce unnecessary suffering. In this episode, we're diving into the question of whether money is really a good problem solver or not. Second, the fundamental dynamics that determine how to make money in society. And finally, is money meaningful or not? So, if you want to hear a lot about money, stay tuned, enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe. Let's go.
I think a reason why money is not very is something bad to strive for. It's bad to prioritize it. It's because money doesn't actually solve that many of your problems.
Yes and no, right? I mean, in my opinion, it kind of depends on what your problems are, of course. But I think the number one, anyways, should always be your priority should be your health and your well-being, right? That should be your number one. If you're gonna chase money or if you're gonna chase anything really at the expense of your health, then no matter what it is that you're achieving, will never be able to compensate for you getting cancer or dying after 6 months of doing what you're chasing, right? So I think that it depends obviously what kind of problems you have. Sometimes money is the only solution. Other times it's not. But yeah, you it kind of degrades as you that's kind of going back to what we said earlier, right? So there's a certain extent where the marginal benefit of earning more money is just not gonna be there. So you can't, you can pay 100,000 for the best doctor if you have cancer, but if you have cancer, even if you have 100 million, you can't pay a doctor 100 million to heal you, whatever that multiple is times more, right? So you can't, that proportion isn't there anymore.
Mm. Mm. Well, I think problems I meant one perspective you can take for deciding what to aim for in life is what will solve your problems. That's the fundamental motivation, I think. Because the problems are you're mortal, you're going to die. So how do you want to spend that time before you die? Or how do you want to increase the likelihood of surviving for as long as possible? How do you want to get, like, the other problem is maybe you have severe anxiety. How are you going to cure that? The other problem is you're stressed out because your income is low and you don't know if you're going to pay the rent. That's another thing. And the way you allocate your time in the day is dependent on what kind of problems you have, or at least what problems you think you have. That's one perspective of looking at it. But money will solve, and let me put it like this. I think money is super important. It makes life a lot easier, because just if you have a good education, if you can sleep at night because you have a buffer on your bank account, all these things, it makes life a lot better. But again, eventually the benefit of the additional cash plateaus. And that's because you have other problems that can't be solved with money, like your family situation. If you have, if you're stressed, if you have anxiety, all these things, you can't really solve them with money, or you can't get that far with money, I would say.
So what do you say to the people who aren't chasing the money but are chasing let's say a bigger purpose? Obviously they're getting very rich at it because, well, it so happens to be that what their purpose is it creates a lot of wealth. But in the meantime, it's you have to sacrifice time with your family, and so your family kind of relationships deteriorate, etc. Is that then worth doing, even though you're not chasing the money, but it's kind of a different purpose, or is that even at that point not worth it?
Well, the question is, you'd need to sort of compare the net value created of the two examples, right? Because on the one hand, let's say one person is striving for a lot of money and sacrifices family time and health, and the other person is striving for a better world and sacrificing family and health. which is better?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, the second example, I would
Yeah.
say, because the second person is, now I don't want to make it sound snowflakey because it's really not snowflakey. It's more of it's a question of morality. Is are you trying or attempting to make the existence of other people less burdensome than it has to be? That's a noble goal, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the money creation, what are you creating? I mean, what benefit are you bringing to people apart from creating money for yourself, which you don't really need?
Well, fundamentally, and that's why I like to defend that perspective, is because I think I understand it. Maybe I don't, but is that normally you make money because you've added value to the society or the people around you, right? Typically, you don't get rich by ripping people off consistently for a number of years because you'll get caught, etc. You'll pay the price, and you'll probably go negative in terms of wealth. But usually, you make money because you've added value. So if you're chasing, and that kind of goes back to I think, I don't know what it's called, which philosophy that is, but it's kind of, if everybody were more egoistic and were to pursue more of a self-interested goal, that they would still end up benefiting all of society, because they're right. It's kind of like the byproduct of your own self-interest, and that goal is that you're benefiting other people around you. I think Steve Jobs, that was his
Mm-hmm.
philosophy. But I think that
Yeah.
that's, there's benefits to that as well.
Okay, I have a rebound. So your argument is dependent on the idea that people would be buying what is good for them. Because it's the same thing. You could say, well, the value created, is that value something people want or what they need? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's what people demand. So what people want is how, when you can satisfy that, is theoretically how you're going to get rich, right?
But okay, then how do you explain people buying?
Using Facebook, right? That
Yeah, for example, or some sort of product that might harm them, and people do that. I mean, let's say, God, let me think of an example. Let's say, why would people buy an overtly expensive jacket? No, that's not a good example. Do you like what's an
I got
example of a product that people buy that is not necessarily good for them?
cigarettes.
Perfect. Exactly. So you say, okay, well, cigarette manufacturers, they're being reimbursed for the value they're creating, but that's depending on the idea that the value or the product being bought is what is good for people, which is not necessarily often the case.
Hmm. Yeah. So what I was just saying before is, it's obviously not absolute, right? So you have those people, companies that sell tobacco or cigarettes, or they sell alcohol, for instance. Those kind of, or pornography, for example, has limited value to people, but it's in huge demand because of the kind of dopamine, whatever it is, that kind of controls us. But typically, in a market, you're not going to be able to sell something that's going to be at the detriment of your clients, right? So that's kind of that theory, and that's clearly, I can appreciate that that's not the case every time, but typically it is. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you're chasing money and you're doing it in a way that is ethical, it's probably, from your perspective, more acceptable than if you're doing it just literally just to get the money, and then you might as well just sell drugs and sell you know pornography or cigarettes. But if you have at least some moral compass, and you're building something that actually adds value to society, then you'll get rewarded for it. And it's because you're chasing the money that you had the motivation and creativity to come up with some genius idea, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I think if the motivation is to deliver value to a society, awesome. But if the motivation is just to build wealth for the sake of building wealth, then I don't know. And I'm not sure how many people actually just, if people frequently seek money for the sake of money, or how many people seek to deliver value and aim to get reimbursed for that. I don't know. Like,
I think, to be honest, it's probably quite limited. I don't think there's many people that really just chase purely money, even though it probably seems like it, because there's plenty of things you could do to make money that is not very ethical, but you could become very rich. And I think a lot of people, if you would approach them and say, listen, you can sell 100 million worth of armament to whatever corrupt government, you'll make 10 million off of it. There's probably going to be a portion of people that would probably not like the idea of it, at least initially, and probably wouldn't go through with it. So I think that, yeah.
well, let's bring the example to something a bit more average. What if it's just somebody works at an insurance company? You graduate and you get hired at an insurance company. How many people, or not even just an insurance, any kind of company out of university, or not even out of university, if like 30-year-olds working at a company, how many of them go to work with the mindset, let's deliver value to society, or let me get my paycheck?
Yeah, I think unfortunately you're probably right on that one. But that's probably down to the company itself. And chances are, if people are going into work with that mentality rather than let's add value to our clients, then that company is not going to last for many years, right?
Yeah, it's really sort of HR, like how they're managing, if they're communicating their mission to their human resources. I think that could definitely be a case. Yet I'm thinking, how many, if a company were to achieve that, it would need to be obvious how the company is adding value to society. And I think there are a lot of companies where it is, I don't want to say ambiguous, but it's just sort of like, it's more, let's say like this, it'd be obvious how a company is adding to society if it produces uh farming seeds for, you know underdeveloped areas in Africa. Sure. But if it's like a company that is creating rubber discs that are in cars in Europe, it'd be like, sure, it helps people transport things from A to B, but and then what?
Well, I think that that's probably more of how many people is it actually adding value to, right? Because it's going to add tremendous value to BMW, who's looking to outsource the rubber disc production, and who they can get it then cheaper than if they built it in-house. Is going to add value to them, right? It's not going to add value to you and me. But does it need to? Does the business that you're building, or if you're going after the money and you're going after the self-interest thing, and you want to satisfy a demand, does it need to satisfy demand for everybody, as many people as possible, or can it be just a niche number of people, but so you won't make as much money, but you'll still get somewhat rich by producing your rubber discs?
I think, well, in order for somebody to think, okay, this company I'm working at is delivering a lot of value to society, it would need to be obvious how it's delivering it, and it would need to be sort of a bit emotionally sort of loaded, because it's hard for the human to quantify or sort of pinpoint the value that the rubber discs are creating. Like, there's not a much emotional value to it. It's like, yeah, I can drive from A to B, but like, it's quite abstract. That's what it is. It's like, well, what would it be like if I didn't have the rubber discs? Is it like, but whereas like, okay, I'm producing seed, like tomato seeds for farmers in Africa. This will help them, you know, survive at the, brink of poverty or whatever. Like that, for example. That's more instinctive, I would
Mhm.
say. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's a more tangible
Hmm.
motive. Yeah.
Let me see. Okay, now I just want to ask how long have we been going? Okay. I want to ask one more thing. If you had $10 billion, cliche question, but what would you specifically do with it? And I'm not
Well,
saying like this percentage in this or this
mhm,
percentage in this, it's just like, what would you do?
mhm. So probably, well, I think almost surely it would ruin part of my life because
Explain.
it would
Yeah.
take away a lot of the, and I'm not saying that the purpose of my life is to make money, but it would take away a portion of my purpose for sure. Because there's satisfaction in building your own, or there's satisfaction in building a company that you started that you know is profitable and is building wealth and is kind of growing, right? So if you slap me 10 billion pounds or $10 billion in front of me, I think I mean, in a way, you then could use that to as a starting ground and to kind of further whatever you are already building. Um, but I think it would, because you so quickly reach a point where basically there are no more limits, right? You basically can do anything you want whenever you want, materially speaking. You can go wherever you want, right? I mean, that there's basically no more limit. That probably gets boring. It's kind of like the Dan Bilzerian scenario, right? He can do what he wants, and it's like I don't know how many years he's been depressed, but I think he spoke about it in one of the podcasts. But I think it would probably take out a lot of the purpose and meaning out of life, and I don't think I would want it.
But let's dive into that. Thanks for being so open about it. So, if you say, well, it would take out the meaning of life for you, are you equating materialism with meaning?
So in my case, then, well, yes, right. What I just said, then that's what that's what that means. But that's because I don't think I've reached that marginal benefit, that part where it starts to plateau, right? And that
Mhm.
point where it starts to plateau, your material wealth is probably different for everybody, for a number of reasons. Why, I'm not really sure why, but let's say you want to, um, you want to live in a house, not an apartment. If that's part of your purpose, then if that's immediately solved for you on the spot, then that purpose is taken away, right? That kind of goal is taken away. It's almost like if half of your goals are monetary, then that means if you get $10 billion, then half of your goals are taken out, right?
Mhm. Logically, yeah, that's what it would mean. What are you aiming for, though?
To build something that is meaningful for myself first, and then everybody surrounding that. It probably sounds kind of selfish, but it has to be. If you're not motivated by what you're building first, then you're just not going to do it, right? So it has to be meaningful to what I'm doing, to what I want to build, and then it has to be meaningful, i.e., add value to the people around you.
And can you explain? I don't want to like go into it too much if you don't want to, but what would give you meaning then? Can you like deduce it more?
Honestly, it's probably, I mean, it almost certainly is an ego related thing. But if you can build something, a company, and you know that you started from basically nothing, you brought, let's say, 10 people on board, you've built something, everybody's winning. That means in 20, 30 years from now, you know, well, hey, we did this together as a group. Without me, you wouldn't have been able to do it. Without you, I would not have been able to do it. So there's that relationship, that meaning, and that's what, that's for me where I derive some value, right? So it's like,
It's
you
like
know,
it's like a manifestation of your potential, of the journey, sort of.
yeah, I think
It's
that's what it
like,
is.
yeah, okay, I can understand that.
You want to um materialize, I guess you can say, the potential that you have in you, right? You want to kind of, so all that potential you have inside, you want to put it outside. You want to bring it out externally. And that sometimes means building a business, or sometimes it means coaching people, or sometimes it means whatever it is. But you
Awesome.
want to put it concrete, right?
It's kind of like, it's kind of the same mechanism of extracting order out of some kind of chaos, because this potential within you, it's nothing really. It's just nothing. But you are guiding the energy or the focus, the potential that is still nothing, into something tangible. It's this process of like nothing into something. I think that's really psychologically special. And that really makes people or humans tick, I think.
Yeah. And especially if you can do it with others, right? If you can enable others to put in concrete their potential, then it's even more satisfying.
Yes. There's something that our genetics like about that. Like it's very human, very sort of archetypal, I would say. Yeah. Awesome.
Was that your last question?
Yeah, that was my last question. Let me just see. Yeah. I mean, time-wise, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we went over quite a few things there. Over discipline, university, money, a lot about money. That's good. We mapped that out. And what else did we talk about? We did, oh, what's worth striving for? And what's our greatest lessons? Yeah, that was the discipline. Dope. I think that's awesome. Cool. Is there anything
Yeah.
else you want to say, Lorenzo?
I think we probably discussed everything that's relevant to. I mean, the point of this session is, I mean, you're aiming towards kind of the people of our age, right? The kind of the students, the early
Yep.
adults trying to build something. What is it? What is the main takeaway that you would say they would need from this session?
I think the main takeaway is really just listening to two guys talk and genuinely talk and discuss what kind of value money brings, or really, I think the value here is observing the reflection of our lifetime experience so far and seeing what we extracted was as something valuable, and what we sort of concluded was destructive, I would say, and learning from that. I think that's really the key take, or what I aim for, because I mean, I wasn't lying. I don't think you were lying. I mean, it's just a genuine, honest discussion. So it was truth, really. And it's a kind of order. It's a formulated kind of order about reality, about life, and it can guide people a little bit, perhaps, I hope, in some sense. That's really what I wanted to. And I think the takeaways in regards to, okay, meaning of life is that money won't really bring you, money in itself, the number won't bring you much meaning. It needs to manifest itself as something else if it is going to bring you meaning, I would say. That's one of the takeaways of today, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
cool.
Cool. So thanks a lot, Lorenzo, for joining. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and yeah, just two guys having a discussion.
There we go.
Okay. Thanks for watching,
Awesome.
everybody. Goodbye.